As I mentioned in a previous video, I've been doing some thinking recently about what kinds of videos to make for my YouTube channel. I was considering making some videos about science, or perhaps my views on spirituality and the reasons that I am not a believer. I initially thought that the field was crowded in this genre, and I still believe that it is, with such luminaries as Thunderfoot, DPR Jones, Aaron Ra, and Don Exodus 2 to name a few. But then it occurred to me that while there are many voices on YouTube on one side or another of these debates, they often devolve into venom and anger, especially from those that may not be entirely, playing with a full deck, so to speak. Perhaps I can take a different approach. Now, I'm not one to shy away from a heated debate, or to just keep my mouth shut when I think someone is wrong. I do believe, however, that honest examination and dialogue about faith can be better accomplished by at least a little civility. I also do not believe in treating people poorly just because they have not had the same background or access to information that I've had during the 36 years of my life so far. While I think that there are some people of faith that are very much worthy of scorn because of their role in attempting to turn back the clock on our collective knowledge, I know that this is the exception and not the rule. By all measurable accounts, especially in the developed world, as our collective knowledge is increasing, our belief in religion and other forms of the supernatural is decreasing. These beliefs are cast off as unnecessary in the face of an ever smaller pool of unknowns that were once explained through supernatural forces. I believe that this is a good trend, and I will try to help hasten this trend if I can. If you are a believer, you may be asking yourself, why does he care what I believe? It's a valid question, and I will explain why I care about it, and thus care about you. I would hasten to add that your decisions are of course your own, and I would not pretend that it should be otherwise, nor would I claim that changing any one person's mind on the subject will affect my life one bit. I would, however, argue that there is value in accelerating the shaking off of Bronze Age ideas about how and why we are here, as well as shaking them off from your own life for your own sake. Unfortunately, many of the most common religions contain warnings of dire consequences about separating yourself from those belief systems, making deconversion a very scary prospect to many. Threats of being spiritually ostracized or made to suffer agony at the hands of powerful unseen deities, or physically ostracized by friends and family, are very powerful threats. Unfortunately, these threats can lead people to stay in their religions, even if they have serious doubts. Add to that the fear of the loss of what I see as the one positive aspect of religion that many do not know how to find elsewhere, the sense of community and charity, and I can well understand that those who wish to leave a religion are left in quite a bind. I have seen this happen to others, including loved ones, and I very much sympathize with the position that these people are in. I would never advocate for someone in such a position to tell the world tomorrow that they renounce religion, especially if their basic needs are dependent on someone with strong religious views. Unlike many forms of faith, lack of faith does not require or even necessarily encourage a shout from the rooftops, and I encourage a pragmatic approach to these types of decisions. That being said, I want to get back to the consequences of faith. I see the consequences of faith in the lives of many people. Two friends of mine spent a couple years in the Peace Corps in a very poor country in Western Africa, and they brought home many wonderful crafts. One of them was a wooden bowl upon which was carved the phrase, "God feeds birds." We talked about what this phrase might mean, and I asked one of them if perhaps it was a reference to God providing for those in need. He agreed that this was very likely to be the meaning of this phrase, and that it was certainly in keeping with the prevailing point of view in that region. Many of the people that he encountered there were destitute and in poor health, yet their faith was very strong that God would make things better, or at least allow for enough resources to keep them alive for an unknown number of years until they died and reached the promised land. This attitude is a large part of what keeps expectations low, yet maintains a relative comfort in the miserable status quo. I know several people, including some of my closest friends, who are often very unhappy, not anywhere close to achieving what is possible in their lives, and they know it. Most of these people are very religious, and they seek answers and relief in part from a supernatural source. If they were to realize that relief only comes from within themselves or from the assistance of other human beings, I believe that they would take a more active role to better their situations, as my less religious friends tend to do. The reason that they are not living in poverty as they are in Africa is because they live in a country with more wealth and opportunity, but the one common trait for both groups of people is the basic belief that an unseen force can help them in their struggles if they just believe hard enough. In some ways, for the devout struggling through life, I would compare the removal of a belief in God to an intervention. Those of us who have worked in the psychology field before and have worked with addicts, as I have, know that in order for an addict to hit rock bottom, their enablers need to stop enabling, and at that point they will generally seek out real healing, both emotional and physical. Until this happens, they will continue to be addicts and will not seek treatment. Removing an unseen supreme being as the constant hope for avoiding doing the hard work on their own or with the assistance of other human beings should make the outcomes better, because they will see the world as it is and not as they wish it to be. While some people, quote, find God, unquote, during such struggles, if they succeed in beating their problems, they will attribute their success to God, thus robbing themselves of credit for a physical or emotional battle that they rightfully won. These people, of course, then feel dependent on God for their next struggle, or for explanations about why life is the way it is. I see faith as a curse, not a blessing, because it simply perpetuates an ancient worldview that tends to find it easy to be willfully ignorant of evidence, in both their own lives and, by their teaching, the lives of their children. The cycle of devaluing their own power and control over our own lives then perpetuates. So, while you may be anywhere on the spectrum of faith, as you are living and hopefully enjoying your everyday life, I encourage you to examine your beliefs with a critical eye every now and then, and I will follow this up in the weeks ahead with other videos on this subject. Thank you for listening, and please rate, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to hear more.